Okay, good afternoon, good morning. This is Josh Jacobs from the LGO Program Office, and I'm delighted to have you join us for the first of our webinars this semester. Today we have Mark Mastandrea. He's LGO class of 1993, and he'll go through his distinguished career path with us, and that's actually part of his topic today. But just briefly, Mark brings 22 years of experience in supply chain and operations, most recently to Wayfair.com, the largest online-only retailer of furniture and home goods in the U.S. Previously, Mark has had leadership positions at Amazon, Kiva Systems, Weight Watchers, Webvan, Hewlett-Packard, and Oracle, and has had these positions both in the U.S. and in the U.K. His degrees from MIT are in management and in materials science, and he also has degrees in chemistry and biology from MIT and a Master in Chemistry from California at Berkeley. I've got everyone muted on the line as they come in. Mark's going to go through his presentation and then invite comments afterwards. So I'll ask Mark to take it away.
Hi, thanks everybody. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate your joining today. And I look forward to having some interaction at the end with anyone who wants to chime in or ask questions or make comments. That'd be great. I'll just, as Josh said, I'll just take you quickly through sort of my background. Could you advance the page, Josh, please? So I'm just going to take you through just real briefly what I've done, which Josh has mostly done, and then I'll take a point of view of like how I've been influenced in my development of what I think of as my personal leadership style. I think everybody on the line probably has a similar point of view of how they approach leadership and how they try to be effective day in and day out. And then I'll take you through a couple of the places I've been and how each of those places have sort of changed me, I guess, on my path. As Josh pointed out, I've had a couple of different roles, perhaps maybe more than the average number of roles for an LGO graduate, or maybe for anyone. More the nature of the fact that I've tended to be in e-commerce, I think, and tended to be in rapidly growing companies, sometimes a couple of them, more than one of them, a startup. And also just, I think, a little bit of an overhang effect of the fact that I'm in a two-career relationship, and sometimes moves have been made for the other person. But I think the common theme that runs through my experience is the sort of supply chain and operations, which is the common LGO theme. So if you could advance the slide. So I think a lot of people around the program, we talk about leadership a lot. It's certainly something that we all care about. We all care about being better leaders. And we talk about what is leadership or what makes leadership. And I think I'm probably going to stay away from that particular topic today, because I think a lot of people have spoken to that extremely effectively. And I think I'm going to probably steer my talk more towards how my personal leadership approach has evolved and had to adapt to different situations that I've found myself in. And maybe there will be some food for thought for you on the phone if you maybe you've experienced similar things, or maybe you have some insights for the group at the end. I think certainly in my career or in my roles I've had, I've tried to sort of stay true to this idea of what is a good leader, or who is the leader that I want to be. And I found at different times I get closer or farther from that. And when I find myself getting farther from it, that really forces me to think about, well, why is that happening, and what do I need to do to get back on course? So I think, like a lot of people, I mean, speaking just for myself, my personal style has certainly been influenced by LGO the instructors that we had, my peers that I was immersed with for those 2 years, the shared experiences that we had, and also experiences that were shared by people while we were there. And then subsequently encountered many strong leaders, and I've had some opportunities for mentorship where I was mentored by 3 or 4 people I can think of who had really profound impact on myself and my development. And then I think what is the main theme of this discussion is through a number of different job changes, I've had some restarts and some occasions to be assimilated into new organizations and new cultures, and I've had to adapt to that. So next down, please. So for me, I've had this ongoing sort of proactive, what I hope to be a proactive process, which involves reflecting on what's happening and doing some retrospection, and oftentimes looking inside, am I really doing the best that I can do in this situation? If I find that, if I'm having, as I'm adapting to a new situation, am I doing everything I can to adapt? And I think this introspection activity incorporates, certainly I think, all of the best things that you encounter when you encounter good leaders or good examples of being effective as a leader. And I think it's just reality that maybe oftentimes you are witnessing not such good examples, and it's a good opportunity to also be retrospective and think about, well, why wasn't that? Why does that make me uncomfortable, what I'm observing, and what would I do in that situation? And then I've also been fortunate, had a couple of opportunities where I've been able to participate in specific training around leadership, like situational leadership, or had 360-degree reviews and coaching sessions, and that's all kind of come together in where I am today. So next slide, please. So if I were to sort of lay out what I think is important to me today, these elements are definitely, I think, tied back directly to many of the things back from LGO days, things that we heard other good leaders talk about being important for a modern leader and a modern change agent. And I think that I've always tried to come back to these. One is transparency and inclusion. So I've always tried to, a core value for me is to share information and to be accessible, and to try to draw other people out or out of themselves and into the process. Next one. I think vision and mission, being very open with where I feel the organization or the group has to go, and making that very, very plain so that it's also available for comment and adjustment by other people on the team. Next one. The idea of non-negotiables is something I got early in my career from another person I worked for, and I've always incorporated that into my approach, which is letting people know on my team what I think the boundaries are, and that it's that there are certain areas around performance and behavior that we're going to care about, and that that some things won't be tolerated in the group. Maybe some things that were tolerated by previous regimes won't be tolerated here. Next one. A very strong element, I think, of my approach has always been sort of planting the seeds for the next generation of leaders. So a lot of times in my career path, I've been in situations that have been maybe certainly full-blown turnarounds, but sometimes just building or a cleaning up type activity. And it's important to me that we're setting up something that is going to be sustainable, sort of, if you think about it multi-generationally in terms of who's coming along in the organization behind you. Not just a, not just a rescue kind of thing, but really planting the seeds and developing the next generation of leaders who can take what's being developed and keep it going, and actually not just keep it going, but take it to the next level. And then finally, the idea of a Socratic approach, which is something that, again, I picked up from somebody else in my career, but I've incorporated it into my approach, which is, I think, easiest way to describe it is it's a kind of a position that's between consensus and directive, which is all of the sort of listening and consensus, all the listening aspects of consensus, listening and incorporating ideas, but stopping short of group decision making, really positioning yourself, if you're the leader, of owning the decision and owning the outcome, and in that way sort of making it safe for those people on your team to execute and not have to worry that, maybe not be worried that they're at risk for failure, that the failure or the outcomes are going to be owned by someone higher up in the organization, and they're going to have a defensible position. So on the next slide, so taking that forward, so how has this played out for me? And I'm going to start kind of midway through my journey at Amazon. So I joined Amazon in 2000, which was before it was an LGO partner. And at Amazon, I think for me it was a profoundly rich experience and was a major part of my development. There were a lot of exemplary leaders there. There still are. There are many more now. And it's really a game-raising kind of environment because the expectation, the performance is high and the expectation is high. So there's both of those elements. It's taking something that runs really well and making it run even better. Next slide, please. A couple of the things that I saw operate at Amazon, which I'm sure are true today. First off, two of the key leaders, Jeff Bezos and Jeff Wilke, each had clear visions for what they wanted the operation to look like and what they thought world-class was. And these elements were things like the propagation, they did the propagation of leadership and of replicating leaders and replicating yourself, the focus on measurement, metrics, defects and defect reduction, and tying that to a process, deep process focus where it's not just, it's about fixing it one time and making sure it stays fixed. They also had a laser focus on what is important, what we're working on, what we're not working on, and they also were very visible, and they worked hard to draw out people in the organization, and they demonstrated this through visiting all the sites twice a year. So physical, visible presence throughout the organization. And also visible actions in other ways in terms of redistributing or reallocating resources based on priorities that were set globally. And so here, numbers are definitely very important, and I think the fact that they have these sort of small number of principles has been something. It's clearly something that is scalable. And when you think about how big the company is and how mind-bogglingly big it is, and it still continues to grow at a mind-numbing pace, it indicates how reproducible this kind of focus is and this kind of structure is. And I think it's, like I said, living through that for a few years is something that has really influenced me and has influenced my thinking about how do you lead and how do you make change. So going forward from there, something that happens as you go in different situations is you're forced to adapt. Or I certainly have been forced to adapt. And you have, as a leader, you have all these tools. Again, I'm not going to go into the tools. I think a lot of people have just talked about leadership tools and techniques and done a very good job at it. But you have tools that you can bring to bear in different amounts. And you have, I think, a primary style that you like to use. But next bullet, please. What happens also, you have to incorporate what are the characteristics of the organization that you're entering into if you're making a change. And there's culture, and there's the mission of the organization, and there's the organizational maturity itself, which in fact, in my situation, has always forced me to adapt my approach and maybe my goals and my objectives, at least in the short term. And next bullet, I've found that the ability to diagnose these attributes of the organization is really important in order to getting off to a fast start and a strong start and making some progress. I was really fortunate that my fit at Amazon was really good, and that culturally I was a good fit there. I found, though, that I couldn't just take what I knew about Amazon and what I knew about working at Amazon and being effective at Amazon to the next place. So next slide, please. After Amazon, I worked at Weight Watchers for about 2 years, and the culture. Weight Watchers is a very strong culture of support, and that comes from the whole mission of the company, which is to really help people to improve their lives through behavior modification and through providing a lot of support to people who are working on something that's very difficult, which is changing their behavior about something very basic, which is diet and exercise. Organizationally, it's very slow to change, slow to evolve organization. It's a place where there are things that the tried and true has worked and worked well, and so there's not a strong impetus to change, which is, for me, it was a little bit of an adjustment to make, because on the one hand, I was hired into a role that was a new role for the company that was all about we need to do things differently than the way we've been doing them, but it turns out that the whole organization doesn't necessarily embrace that mandate on the day you show up, and you have to figure out how to make your mandate belong to the rest of the organization. And one of the most useful pieces of advice I got when I was early on at Weight Watchers was when someone told me, at Weight Watchers, people have to feel good about it. And that kind of unlocked for me what was going to be different about Weight Watchers and what I had to do, how I had to modify my approach. At Amazon, you brought data, and data was your offense and your defense, and your data was challenged, and you defended it, and you challenged others' data, and at the end of this process, people felt like they understood what was going on and they understood what they needed to do. I'm oversimplifying, of course, but that was kind of that was a major part of the process for deciding what to work on and what to do next. At Weight Watchers, a big part of the process in helping somebody change their behavior about diet and exercise is sharing stories. And the culture at Weight Watchers is rich with many, many stories of people that have had success losing weight and have really moving stories to tell. And once I kind of put together this quote and that idea of Weight Watchers, I realized that the way I had to motivate people to do things like embrace forecasting and sales and operations planning, and embrace tracking defects in order fulfillment, was I had to tell stories about this stuff. I had to bring people into stories about my background or about backgrounds at other companies I worked with, or stories that I received from peers and colleagues and friends about what they were working on, and I had to sort of motivate my mission through these stories rather than through trying to demonstrate, how much money could be saved or how many customers could be impacted or that sort of thing. It really comes down to telling a story about another individual or another individual event, and that was in the end, that was sort of, for me, an important example of adapting to the culture to ultimately get done what I felt needed to be done. From Weight Watchers, I moved on to a company called Kiva Systems, which is a company here in the Boston area, which is in the material handling industry. It's a kind of a breakthrough company that deals with using autonomous mobile robots to aid in the picking and order fulfillment process in warehouses. It's about, I guess it was about 5 years old when I joined it, and it is now scaling up rapidly and having a lot of success. Sold about probably close to 30 material handling systems now, mostly to sort of household name companies in fulfillment, many of them e-commerce companies. And the culture at Kiva, which is really an engineering company, probably a quarter of all the people who work at Kiva are MIT graduates, and another quarter are probably Cornell graduates from the engineering school, is we're problem solvers, and we really applaud creativity and elegance in problem solving and in finding the right answer. And the mission here is to change the world. I mean, the world is defined, to a fulfillment or distribution center person. Fulfillment is the world. So the mission is to change fulfillment. And organization is one where, although it's a startup and the organization is kind of forming, the strategy has been to go out and get experience and bring in people who bring lots of experience to the table and who can operate at a high level with minimal supervision and guidance. And so but when you bring in all these sort of experienced, creative people who are really good at what they do, it turns out that they are skeptics too. And in order to make people to get people on board with your mission, the people have to understand it, what you're doing and why. And you also have to go beyond just explaining the how and the why, but you have to show the work, essentially. You have to explain how you went from each of your assumptions to your conclusions and why they hold together as a whole. It's not enough to just show data or to show a benefit, but you have to demonstrate your thought process. And that's what really rules at Kiva. It's thought process. And it's kind of, if I were to coin a phrase, it's sort of data-based experience, not database as in a database, but people, you think of their experiences that they've had in similar situations as data, and oftentimes you have to relate. When you present an idea or a proposed process, people will relate that to other experiences they've had because there is so much experience there. And so what really gets the way to get work done at Kiva Systems is you have to create a model of the situation and show how prior experience or prior art fits into the model, and therefore why what you want to do can be extrapolated from the model and has a chance of being successful. And so that was a key learning for me at Kiva. So at this point, I want to point out, I think I just want to take a half step back from what I'm talking about here and just point out that I'm presenting this topic kind of chronologically as it goes through my career. But these tools or techniques or approaches, they're not really things that I learned sequentially or only in these situations. I want to just come back to something that I said in the beginning, which I hope resonates with everyone, that we all have these sort of toolkits of different tools and techniques that we rely on and that we use in different mixes, or perhaps we apply in different orders, and that what I'm trying to emphasize here is that learning about your organization, learning about what is the best mix of your different tools and techniques that you have, and what is the best order to apply them, is a key part in, at least for me, has been a key part in getting up to speed and in getting work done. And in sort of the faster I've been able to figure that out, the faster I've been able to generate value and results in my different roles. Now I'm at Wayfair. I joined Wayfair about just over 6 months ago. I was having a fantastic experience at Kiva. I'd been there for about 4 years, but I was really itching for a role that was really more traditional in terms of operations and execution. The Kiva role was very much an engineering-driven company, and I loved the product, and I loved the culture and the people. And but at the end of the day, I found that what I really missed was being responsible for supply chain and fulfillment, and I wanted to get into a role like that again, and so I decided to jump back into operations and e-commerce in a big way, and I've been the VP of supply chain at Wayfair for about 6 months. And at Wayfair, we have culturally, we're a culture of meritocracy. We have an extremely flat organization. There's almost no there are very few management layers. There are very few individuals in management, and this comes right from the top, and it extends to every aspect of our company. We don't have titles on our business cards. We don't have offices. Nobody in the company has an office. We sit in an open office plan where everyone has a 3-foot by 6-foot desk, and we occupy 9 floors in the Christian Science Tower in Boston. And we have about 100 people per floor, and that's our 700-person company. And our mission is to grow. We're trying to grow as big as possible, as quickly as possible, and our primary activity is adding vendors, suppliers, and SKUs to our catalog. It's probably worth stepping back a minute. For those of you who have not heard of Wayfair, Wayfair is our new name as of September 1. We used to be called CSN Stores, and we are the largest e-commerce only site for furniture and home goods. We did about $380 million in revenue last year. We're on course to do about 500, maybe 525 this year. And we are second in online sales in furniture and home goods, only to Pottery Barn. And our, again, what we do is we aggregate all kinds of many furniture SKUs and lamps and home goods from many suppliers. And unlike most brick and mortar companies, we don't present a style point of view. So our goal is really to be the largest possible site to find really anything for the home. And our newest tagline with our new name is "We love zillions of options." And so our company has been really singularly focused on growing size and scale through growing the catalog. So from an organizational point of view, we definitely have a startup feel, and we're really built on fresh outs and people with lots of energy, but really not tons of experience. our company is overwhelmingly young, and most of the people working here, this is their first job. And we have made some, one of the reasons I was hired at all in the company was we have made some significant changes to our strategy and our business model in the year 2011. Our company was, for its entire history, pretty much a drop shipper. We did not hold inventory of any goods. When we made a sale, we would drop the order directly to the supplier and then ship it directly from the supplier's warehouse to the customer's warehouse. And this year we've made a couple of significant changes to our model. We've opened 2 warehouses and in an effort to improve speed of delivery and quality of delivery by stocking some items of strategic importance. And we're also addressing some of our value-added services that we provide for some of the larger items we ship. We ship a lot of home goods that ship by a parcel, but we ship a lot of goods through a back of the truck or a white glove type service, that are just too large to ship through parcel, and that are brought into the home by, say, a 2-man delivery service, and they could be set up by that service or assembled as well. And so what that means is we've really ratcheted up the complexity of our process really quickly and in major ways. And we've found that we've really outstripped our ability to solve some of these more difficult problems that aren't simply numbers problems or scale problems. And so it's caused us as a company to look at bringing in more experienced people, mid-level managers, senior-level managers, in numbers that we've really never attempted to before, because it's always been very flat organizationally, and when there have been management positions, they've almost always been promoted from within. And this is a challenge for the company, and it's a challenge for the managers coming in, because there is really no good way and no history of assimilating someone, sort of an experienced person, into a process that's already running, or an experienced person into a new process, and giving them sort of resources and technology to go after these new problems that we really don't fully understand as a company because they're new to us. Another part of the culture is it's extremely execution-oriented, which is kind of ties to this mission of grow as quickly as you can. But by execution, I mean it's kind of a different flavor from what I was talking about at Amazon, sort of the data flavor. It's really about throughput, putting more SKUs up, more transactions through the system. And because of that sort of throughput focus, most of the benefits in the past have come from incrementally improving the speed of a process or the throughput of a process. The increasing complexity of our business is really leading us to address problems that don't have incremental type answers. And this is really where the challenge for us for the next 6 to 12 months lies at Wayfair, is understanding how to address these problems that are just inherently more complex. In the past, next bullet please, the way to be successful at Wayfair has really been to really lean more on the directive style than, say, a visionary or an inclusive style. It's really been about breaking the work down into really small elements and then going out and just ticking them off and just getting the throughput done. And now we're charged with solving these problems that really require a lot more time for understanding and for baking in the ideas for solving them and for coming up with a solution, maybe trialing different possible solutions and allowing for some of those to fail. Not every possible solution will work, but some of them will, and you build on those. And so there's for me, it's really figuring out how to get this kind of longer term work done in a culture, in an organization that's really geared up for real short-term type improvements and incremental type activity. And I'm still working on this in terms of deciding how this affects my approach and my style, and I'm not there yet. So just, I guess, to summarize, what I have found is next one, please. Is that a lot of my next bullet, please. A lot of my journey through becoming a leader and improving my ability to lead has been this, adapting, learning how to adapt, learning how to read a situation, adapt to it, but while also being true to my own leadership style, while also making sure I get done what needs to be done, what is the best thing to be working on at that time. I think, things that have really been helpful to me is especially when I find myself in a situation that's new to me, is taking a trial balloon approach in the beginning. Don't necessarily want to, when you come into an organization and you're new, and you have, especially if you have a visible mandate or a visible project, you want to hit the ground running and make a big impression quickly, not because you're trying to make a big impression and show everyone how great you are, but because you want to generate enthusiasm and energy around the initiative you're working on and get people engaged in it. But knowing how to do that, how to make your message, how to make people receptive to your message, or how to construct your message so that people will be receptive to it. You don't want to make a misstep with your first big communication. And so I've found that, maybe starting out with something related to what I want to accomplish that's a little bit smaller, and trying out an approach for organizing that initiative or for getting the message across, and then seeing how that plays out and seeing what those results are, and then maybe adjusting that for the bigger message it has worked out for me a little better than just sort of coming out of the gate with, okay, here's what we're going to do. It's just something that I find is part of the adaptation process. But this idea of sort of this triad of balancing what you need to know, what you know needs to be done, and how you know it should be done in terms of what is the best way to do it, or what the best way to approach it, with what the culture needs and with what actually the business needs, is kind of this balancing act that is it's a balancing act and rapid diagnosis of what is going to work in the organization and what's going to help you assimilate the quickest, is really an important step in framing up your message. So I think I'm going to stop there. I hope that that was at least helpful, or at least made some sense to some people, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay, thanks so much. I'm going to unmute everyone, so I hope everyone will jump in with any questions they might have or comments about Mark's presentation. Okay, I'm going to start off because I had a question. We just yesterday here at MIT were talking about how, I don't know whether this rings true, I see that there are some older or should I say more experienced LFM graduates on the line, and one of the comments that one of the faculty made, who's been around the program for its whole existence, is that early on in the program, many of the projects that the internship projects LFMs were asked to go out and do were not terribly complex technology-wise, but did require a lot of management savvy in terms of figuring out their implementation. Whereas now, there's a hugely rapid increase in technological complexity, whether it's in product development or actual manufacturing technology or the supply chain sorts of things that Mark is talking about today. And Mark, I just wonder whether you could comment on whether you feel like the LFM experience that you had prepared you for both the technological and the management complexities that you faced in your career since then.
I would say that that's a tendency that I have noticed myself in my own positions. My last two positions here at Wayfair and at Kiva Systems were both required me to do a lot more, have a lot more technology focus than positions prior to that. Use technology, use data, manipulate data, create models, create stories with data, and I think that, yeah, I think the background is tailor-made for that, because we all come out of a background of continuous improvement, and although we don't, I think, officially, well, at least when I was there, we didn't officially learn or get certified in things like Six Sigma or Lean, but those principles and approaches position you to structure, look for gaps and structure analyses and structure investigations, and then use those to communicate what's important and what the next steps ought to be. So I think it's a great background for that, and I've definitely noticed the tendency to towards more technical type approaches to problem solving.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Yeah, this is Manny Gilio, class of 02 LFM, currently working at J&J. My question is around, if you would comment, and it doesn't sound from your resume that you've had a role where you have had mostly to lead through influence as opposed to, you didn't have any direct reports, but you have to get things done. But I was curious to know if you would talk a little bit about how you see leadership different. I recently went from a role where I was a plant manager, so had a lot of, let's call it, positional power, to one where I have to basically no direct reports and have to lead by influencing people. And I'd be curious on your thoughts about how you see the difference in those two and what you've seen work in your experience.
Well, I think that even when you're positional power, when you have a position of organizational power with direct reports, you still, at the end of the day, are primarily leading through influence. And I think in most of my roles where I've had some sort of cross-functional responsibility, where, especially in like a supply chain role where you may control planning, but you need to work with merchandising or marketing or sales to actually make planning work, there's always influence involved. So I think that is partially what I was trying to convey in my talk. I know maybe it wasn't as clear as I had hoped, but the understanding how people in the organization expect to be influenced, understanding how they think about change, and do they think about change, are they motivated to change because they have seen the before data and the after data, or are they motivated to change because they are moved by a story about what it might look like after, or how it's worked previously somewhere else, and what the people went through and how they reacted to it and how they ultimately changed. I think that's where you need to suss out what motivates people in that organization so that you can construct your approach and your message to best fit with that.
That was a great question. Thanks a lot for that. Anyone else?
I have a question. Can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Mark, this is Jim Lawton, and the question I had for you is, it seems like of what you've presented, the piece that seems like it's hardest to me is the part where you describe the importance of figuring out and understanding what the right kind of leadership is going to work in which you're operating. I mean, you described a really broad set of really different cultures and what makes them successful and how they've been historically. At the same time, when you've needed to go in and figure out how to change them, it strikes me that it's hard to go figure out exactly what makes an organization tick. Are there any recommendations or skills that you've developed or tools that you'd suggest in terms of how does one quickly diagnose what makes a company tick?
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to convey, and that's what I've found has been really challenging is when is doing that, is figuring out what is going to work. And I don't think I have a great answer other than two things that I would recommend that have worked better for me are starting smaller, so trying to find a smaller project that's almost like a proof of concept for your technique or your approach, and then asking, not being afraid to ask peers and your management, how would they do it? How would they go about conveying a message or introducing a change project? I'm not saying that they're going to be able to give you a roadmap for exactly how to do it, but if you certainly asking others how they've seen it done here will give you some data points to draw on, which then you can sort of blend in with your own approach of how you want to go about doing it. But I guess the main thing would be start smaller with something, carve off a smaller piece of a project and use that as a pilot for just testing the water with your approach.
Great, thanks, Mark.
Now, Mark, I know that you had said some of your, this is Elaine Cooper, I'm currently at Raytheon, LFM 95. You had said that some of your moves had been due to your spouse, but have you, what have you done to just be promoted within where you are? It sounds like you had a previous position at Wayfair and then you've moved up to the VP role. Am I incorrect on that, or is that correct?
No, I haven't. I've only been here for 6 months, so I'm in the role I was put into. Yeah, quite frankly, I haven't had a ton of internal promotions at Webvan, which I didn't really talk about so much. I had a couple different roles there where I was a project director, and then I was a director of operations, which was a much larger role, promotional role. But no, for the most part, I haven't. I mean, in my career path, I haven't had tons of promotions, I guess. Is there something else I can?
Well, no, I was just curious. Did you? I mean, when you moved, it sounded like when you moved from company to company, it sounded like you moved up, but I was just curious as it was more from taking the experience you had from the previous role and then, leveraging that for the next role versus...
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of times my moves have been upward. Sometimes they've been lateral. I think, I mean, I've tried to in my career path, and when I'm in a mode where I'm looking for a role, I try to draw a continuous thread along the roles I've had, and I think the roles I've had tell a pretty coherent story about supply chain and operations. But yeah, it's been a couple. I haven't. That's one thing about my career, which is maybe a little bit abnormal, is I have had probably more roles than more companies than average, and I haven't had extremely long tenures at any particular company.
Thank you.
Thanks for that question. Are there any other questions? Okay, if that's it, I just want to give a big thanks to Mark for the wonderful presentation, and to those of you who contributed your comments and thoughts afterwards. This is a great way that we try to add value to the LGO LSM alumni community, and with Mark's permission, I'm going to be archiving this webinar and putting it up on the MIT Tech TV collection of videos that belongs to the LGO program. And so if you have enjoyed this and would like to recommend Mark's talk to a colleague or a friend, within the week you'll be able to visit the site and send that person a link. So again, thanks everyone, and I really appreciate Mark for joining us today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.